Hey, what's up, Rebel? Welcome back to the Health Rebels podcast. And I'm your host, Steve Hicks. Today, I'm really excited. Today, we're going to give you the number one rule that if you just followed this, you'll be healthier. We're going to be giving you the golden rule for healthy living. And, here at Health Rebels, we always want to go over the Rebel Oath before we get started with the podcast, right? The Rebel Oath is the framework we use to choose healthy habits, but also to protect ourselves and shield against unhealthy misinformation. The 5-part framework says to reject extremes, to energize ourselves with healthy habits, to break free from common standards, to excite yourself about your potential, and ultimately, love yourself and act accordingly. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. I think today's episode is going to be super impactful. It's super freeing. It gives you a lot of permission to honestly, and this sounds weird to say, it gives you a lot of permission to suck as you go through this, but still come out ahead, right? So the golden rule, this is the number one thing that if you follow, it'll help you be healthier. This is part of a new thing that I'm working on called the 13 Laws of Healthy Living. It's going to be available. It's going to be a free download just for you guys, just for my listeners of the podcast. I'm going to have that available next week. Keep your ears and eyes open for that, and I'll let you know when that drops. But I want to give you the number one. I want to give you the golden rule today. And that is do the best you can with what you got. Now, this is a great rule. It's a little bit overly simple. It seems too obvious. It seems almost offensively easy. But really, I think that's the ultimate guide to healthy habits. There are going to be times when life throws you a curveball and you're not going to be able to do the perfect plan. You're not going to be able to do the right thing, right? So if I told you that the golden rule was 0 sugar and someone invites you to your nephew's birthday party, are you going to have some cake, right? That rule would just set you up for failure. But the golden rule, do the best you can with what you got, is really ideal, and it's really flexible, right? If you're at a birthday party, if you're at a barbecue in the summertime, you don't have access to the perfect food that you want, but you have access to food. You can still think about the categories that we coach, the food categories that we coach, and the portion sizes that we coach in our nutrition system. And you can piece that together, and you can do your best with what's available. You might not be perfect, and that's fine, but you can do the best with what you got. Now, I do have to preface this. I do kind of hate this rule. I do kind of hate this because it's backwards and we misrepresent it all the time. We just instinctively come about with the wrong definitions. And so I want to work back on this a little bit. Do the best you can with what you got. I think that is phrased backwards. I think the first thing that we have to look at is what you got, right? With what you got, you want to do the best available, right? With what you got is looking at your situation. And this is dynamic. This is fluid. Some days you might experience this. Some days you wake up on top of the world, ready to crush it. Other days you wake up with a cold and you're tired and you're angry and you're down and you don't want to do things. Right? We'll have different things in different situations. I already talked about my nephew's birthday party, and my brother's birthday's in July, and we usually have a barbecue. And so we'll go down, have festivities. There's a barbecue. I don't have control of my meal plan in those situations, but I still get to be able to do the best with what I have around me, right? So I think it's first we want to address what is in that situation, right? Because regardless of what the situation is, and I tell this to my clients, the number one thing we want to think about with mindset is there's opportunity everywhere. So what do you have around you? What is the opportunity that you do have? What is it that you can use? A lot of times people get short on time and they're not able to do a full workout. Do they have 5 minutes? Do they have 10 minutes? Do they have the ability to do a set of push-ups and maybe some planks and then squats and call that good for that time? Right? What do you have? With what you have, do the best that's available. Maybe as I work on this, on the 13 laws of fitness, I might actually reverse that. Instead of saying do the best you can with what you got, it might be with what you got, do the best that's available. But that was a sidetrack. Sorry about that. Sorry for taking you along on that journey with me. But no, that is a good thing. We want to assess what is in your current situation right now so that we know what we can actually do. The second part of it that usually comes first is do your best. Now, we want to define what your best means, because that's not a steady state definition. Your best is not set in stone. Your best is very dynamic. It's very fluid. It's going to change day to day. Like we mentioned, some days you're going to wake up on top of the world. Your best might be 100%, might be 110%. Some days you're just not going to have it. Some days you're going to be down. Maybe your best is 50%. And that's still your best. One of the big problems that we have is obviously we all went through the school system, right? For 18 years, we learned that our best is on the test 100%, right? You're given all the questions. If you answer them correctly, you get 100%. That's the best. And then your grade ends up being however close to that you got, whether it was 90%, whether it was 95%, whether it was 60%. We still think that our best is that 100%, and then we grade ourselves in relationship to that. But that's not true. I probably shouldn't confess this on the podcast, but back in college, I was a pretty pitiful student. I was cursed with natural intelligence, and I thought that I could get ahead and get away with less efforts. And I'm really good at test taking, even with information that I don't know. Even with stuff that I've never studied, I'm still pretty good with those tests. And an example of this was, I still remember one of the questions that I got correct on a history test. I had missed a couple weeks of class because I chose to play video games instead. But I missed a couple sections in the history class, and they would ask a question. I remember they asked a question about how would you describe this particular period of time? And I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. I never went to that lecture. I never read that chapter. I had no idea what was going on in that time period. But I knew shortly after that there was a revolution. Historically speaking, revolutions usually occur after either an economic distress or political corruption, right? Those are usually the two impetuses that lead to a revolution, or the combination of the two, right? If you look at the French Revolution, that came off a lot of economic turmoil, and then Marie Antoinette has that famous misquote saying, "Let them eat cake," where there's that disconnection between the elites, the ruling class, and the people. People couldn't afford cake. It was really arrogant and closed-minded of her to just offer them to eat cake when that wasn't available, and so people got mad and chopped off her head. But history aside, let's not go down one of my nerd turns. I understood what led to a revolution, and not knowing what happened in this time, but knowing that it led to a revolution, I took a guess. And I called it, I don't remember whether I claimed the economic turmoil or the political corruption or the combination of the two, but I put that down as the answer, and it ended up being right? So in that situation, if we think about it, the best really is not knowing the answer, because I didn't have the answer, but I did have some other stuff, and I put down a guess. I did the best I could, and the outcome ended up being pleasant, but I did the best I could. The other option that sometimes happens is if someone missed that class, if someone missed that lecture, and they didn't know the answer, that's it. They're not perfect, and they don't try. And then they don't have that chance to have a positive outcome. When we say to do your best with what you got, it means to take the resources that are available and to put in some effort. You might get out a really good outcome. You might not. But you definitely will not get an outcome if you don't try. You have to do the best you can with what you got. Look, I know today was a little weird. Today was a bit of a ramble going down into like family vacations and history classes and me being a terrible college student. But I really want to leave this with you. The number one rule, if you follow this, if you make this your law, the golden rule of healthy living is going to be do the best with what you got. No matter what, whether you're in a different situation with different nutrition, if you're cut behind on time and don't have necessarily as much exercise options, if you're traveling and don't have the equipment access, it's all fine. You're not going to be perfect and you don't need to be. Just do the best you can with what you got and you'll end up getting a really good outcome. And that's what I want to leave you with. Follow the golden rule and make sure to keep the oath, right? As a rebel, we always want to leave you with keeping the oath. Keep the oath, be happy, be healthy, and I'll see you back here again tomorrow for another episode of the Health Rebels podcast. Have a great day, Rebel.